there as we were just, thank you, Megan, just as we were waiting for our online attendees to join us. So thank you, everybody, and it's our honour to extend a really warm welcome to you all today. So to kick things off, we will just start by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today, and pay my respects to their elders past and present, as well as for emerging leaders. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today as well. So yes, so again, a very big warm welcome to a lovely full room, and we have a very impressive 60 attendees online. So a huge welcome to anyone joining us online. I don't blame you joining online with the rainy weather and getting out in the wet and finding parks. So yes, welcome and thank you for joining. So my name is Carly Davidson. I am a Forsyths Business Services Principal located here in Tamworth. So this is our 4th event that we've hosted in our series of being able to serve and offer some really insightful and hot topics to our clients and extended friends of Forsyths. So we hold these events because we know what we do really well, and that is accounting, financial services and audit. And we're really proud to have such fantastic affiliations of the business that are experts in their fields that we take great pleasure in connecting our clients in with and being able to have them serve you to their best of their capabilities to get what you need out of your business. So obviously today's topic is on cybersecurity, a very hot topic, and we can't understand the importance of challenges in protecting your businesses from attacks and fraud. It's easy to think that why would anyone take an interest in us little businesses out here in regional New South Wales, but no one is insulated from these types of events. In my role, I'm seeing more and more of our clients being targets of scam and fraud, and it's really obvious. The text messages, the emails, these forms of correspondence that are dressed up from almost all government bodies is a real concern for our clients, and we can all think to other situations where we've had something that is a little bit fishy. So it's a great opportunity to be able to have some fantastic panellists and share their insights into their relevant fields. So let me introduce them, and please bear with me as I read their bios. So we're starting at the end with Jacob Sawyer, my fellow principal. So Jake, along with Paul Cornell, based in Armidale, leads the largest audit team in regional New South Wales, so we're very proud of that. Jacob specialises in audit and assurance, and the main portfolios he covers includes local government, clean energy assurance and not-for-profit. As an auditor, this seminar is near and dear to Jake as he continues to see the emerging risks of cybersecurity and the ever-present threat of fraud within our audit portfolio. So welcome, Jake. Next, we have Joe Burns, CEO of Cloudwize Technologies. Cloudwize is a local IT support service business that we use to support our needs here at Forsyths. Joe has the unique ability of making IT more relatable to us non-tech savvy people, which we appreciate. So thanks for joining us, Joe. We also welcome Alan Downey. Alan has over 20 years of experience in the networking and security industry and a focus on professional and managed cybersecurity services that minimise risk and improve efficiency for their clients. Alan currently leads technical cybersecurity engagements for SecureWorks, which is a Sophos company. So thank you for joining us, Alan from Sydney. And you'll very much appreciate hearing his Irish accent. Next we have Shannon from Westpac, and Shannon is the transaction banking manager based in Armidale. Shannon has worked across both frontline branch roles and commercial banking. So you've seen it all in regards to scams and frauds relating to the banking industry. So welcome, Shannon. And last but not least is our very own internal IT manager, Michael Leary. Michael leads our team here in ensuring the protection of both our client and firm data. Michael will share how Forsyths have thought about developing our security plans and partnerships. So thank you, Michael. So we will open up the forum now to questions from our panel. We've got some questions tailored, and of course we'll open up the floor to questions at the end, as well as our online attendees. So Jake, we'll kick off with you if that's okay. So the first question being, what kind of cyber scams or fraud are you seeing hit small businesses the most lately? And are there any new ones we should be watching out for?
Yeah, thanks, Carly. So I guess in our capacity as auditor, we have a lot of exposure to a lot of different entities ranging in size from, $500,000 turnover a year all the way up to $150 million turnover a year. And I don't want to be alarmist, although I probably am going to be alarmist, but, in the last sort of 3 years, I've seen more cybersecurity scams and general fraud than I've seen in the first 12 years of my career. It's just becoming so prevalent, and it's stuff that businesses are getting affected by. When I'm talking about fraud, there's the external element, which is the cybersecurity threats, people trying to get into your business, get your data, get into your money, all that sort of stuff. But there's also the internal threats, and that's your team members within your business. And we're seeing things from as sophisticated as phishing. Everyone's aware of phishing, which is you get an email and they're trying to get your details. But what I'm seeing, and I'm going to go through an anecdotal one here in a second. Vishing is where you're getting phone calls from people claiming to be other people, and they used to be quite rudimentary. You get the phone call that's in Chinese or in AI, asking for something, or you can clearly tell they're overseas. But the example that I have that I've dealt with recently was quite a large entity. They had a phone call from someone claiming to be the new contact of one of their key contractors. And this is a contractor who was doing about $15 million worth of work for this business. They rang up the creditors clerk, and over a period of months, they developed a rapport with the creditors clerk and slowly but surely got them to change the information about the business in the system. They started off simplistically going, I'm the new contact, new number, new email. Over time, it became, we've changed our bank details. And they were able to, the creditors clerk followed all their processes, asked the email address, you need to send me through, bank statements and a sign off by your CEO. And they were able to provide this. It was all doctored, of course, but they were able to provide false bank statements, false letters from the CEO of this business. And then it all culminated after a number of months. They were making a payment for about $1.5 million, and they actually paid it to the scammer, not the legitimate business. And in this particular circumstance, this business was very, very, very lucky in that they weren't the first business that was scammed by these people. And the bank, and it was actually, here's a shout out to Westpac, it was actually Westpac was the bank of the scammer, and they were monitoring the account. So they saw this $1.5 million go into this account that they knew were for scammers, and they went, no, get out of here. Send that back, and that's when they realised, oh no, we've been scammed here. So they were very, very lucky. But what they were really, their controls were reasonably good. This is a big business, good controls. They were foiled by the element of human trust. If someone gives you a phone call and they seem like they're legitimate, they just some bloke down the road, you're more likely to trust them and then follow the narrative as it goes. So this was very nefarious, very sophisticated, and this business was very lucky that they didn't get caught by this phishing scam. So we've seen things from that sophistication level. What we're also seeing is on the other end of the spectrum, which I don't think this is the technical terminology for it, but petty theft, where we're seeing businesses now being targeted by their employees of the business. They're doing things like, buying personal things on their corporate credit cards. They're, siphoning fuel out of heavy machinery. They're taking tools home with them, to use. They're taking heavy machinery home, doing private works at home, and then they'll bring the machinery back, this type of thing. So that's becoming very prevalent in a lot of our organisations that we're auditing. And I think that the main reason around this particular low-end petty theft type fraud is, we've all been experiencing the pinch of cost of living, higher mortgages, these types of things, and it's just, starting to take a toll on people, and they're thinking that they're entitled to a little bit of an extra benefit. So, that's what I'm seeing out there from my perspective.
Yeah, I love those examples, Jake, because I think that's the thing. We are very much, educated people, and you like to think that you can pick up on when things aren't quite right, but no one's immune to it. And I'm going to cross to Shannon here.
Just before you do that, can I ask a quick question? Those people, when they provided all the documentation to the emails and changing, could they have followed that up with the bank to make sure that it was a legit account? Because privacy laws stop you from finding all that stuff out too, don't they?
Yes, so there was definitely weaknesses there. So what the process of this business was is that if you do get a change of bank details, you're meant to then ring the number that you have on file for that creditor to verify that it's legitimate. And unfortunately, because the scammer had changed the phone number first, they made the phone call and it was the scammer. So it was just the sequence of events put them in a vulnerable position. There's controls that they had in place, but they just did not work in this scenario just because of how it worked out.
So crossing to Shannon, where, we do rely so heavily on the banks and external systems being a safety net to catch us with these things. And Westpac has a phenomenal payer verification process within your online banking platforms. How else does the bank support small business in being able to be a bit more insulated from these types of events?
So not just Westpac, obviously other banks have layers of security as well. Westpac just recently released confirmation of payee, so that is an extra layer of security. So when you go to make the payment, it confirms that BSB and account number is legitimate. So say there's 100 people who have already paid it, yes, that's a green tick. We're quite happy to make that payment. There's the second option is something isn't just right there, so we'll stop the payment and ask you to confirm the payee to make sure that that is correct. And then the third one is, we're not paying this, so something might have flagged like the account has been opened within the 24 hours, and as you mentioned, Jacob, that there may be money going in and out of the account, so it could be being used for real, money laundering. So there's many things. Westpac has also just invested in safe calls, so we ring you through the app instead of the phone call. So I know, like me, we all just look at our phone these days and go, I'm not answering that, I don't know who that is. But it will actually come through your Westpac app and you can see that it is Westpac. So you're a little bit more secure answering questions and knowing that you're actually talking to the bank. We're actually also about to introduce Safe Block. So say you do notice something not right on your account. Normally cards, we can go in and block your card now in your app in any banking. If you see something on your account that isn't quite right, we're going to introduce that you can actually put a block on your account. So while you're on the phone, we all have to wait half an hour to talk to someone, unfortunately, sometimes on the phone. You can have that sense of security knowing that your money is safe and you stop that before it leaves the bank. So, yeah.
Fantastic. And Jo, I'd love to hear some of your experiences in that domain as well.
In terms of the types of scams and so forth that people are seeing?
The types of scams and how Cloudwize through, software recommendations and support in IT can assist in that as well.
So it's very much the social engineering. This is the, the example that you were talking about, and the official term in the industry is social engineering. So it's where they're working out methods and avenues to be able to, ask you to act quickly. And to make decisions on the fly and to hand over important details. So there's we see things like MFA fatigue these days. So we all have MFA on our phones and we have to continually push buttons, accept things, all that side of it. It gets frustrating. So we had an example of a client where they had MFA deployed. They had all the security sort of features in place, but one of their team was just getting hounded for a MFA code, and they eventually ended up, there was a phone call and they just handed that code over, which then gave immediate access to the hackers as such, and they set to work and started emailing out and so on. So we see things like that. We see business email compromises, so where information is sent suggesting it's from the CEO, or and that's where your processes are really important to be able to control and ensure that you're getting the correct information, albeit even that is complicated these days. I think the things that we also probably need to be aware of is really the impact of AI. We have these tools now, so do the dark forces out there. They have quantum computing access as well. So the ability to actually go into the dark web and purchase a whole heap of data. So Qantas, Medibank Private, Optus, like, you know, all of those things, our data is out there. Like the running joke now is if you get pulled over by the police, you can just tell them to Google your driver's license. You know, that sort of ability for them to then match pieces of information. And so the things that I think I would encourage any business to do is to make sure MFA is deployed on everything. So not just on some apps, even if the applications that you use don't support MFA, then you should probably think about whether or not that's the right application for you. You should have patching happening all the time. So there are vulnerabilities being addressed in our software and in our hardware all the time. And so ensuring that patching is happening on a regular basis is important. Backups is really important. We have a saying in our business that you can never have too many backups. So ensuring that you actually know today our data is spread everywhere. We've got something in Xero, we've got something in Microsoft, we've got, you know, so actually understanding where that data is and how it's backed up is really, really important. And then we start to get into some of the, I guess, defending against social engineering. And so password management, really encouraging your staff to actually have complex passwords. So to do that, give them a password manager that actually allows them to capture that information so that every single site they sign up to has a unique password associated with it. Those password managers, the business one, will also allow you to actually share passwords securely rather than them on the post-it notes, the Excel spreadsheet, the back of a book. You know, we've all been there. Ensuring that those are in place, and then training. I think it's really important to do training with your staff around campaigns to help them to identify what could be scams or fraud or you know, new technologies, and then also testing them. So quizzes at the end of these, you know, 5-10 minute modules, random simulated phishing attacks that are asking them to identify and select that this is something dodgy and to alert IT. So we're equipping them with the skills to do, you know, to be able to identify. And then there's a couple of other things that we can all do so that you don't need technical skills for. Really, what data you have on your clients and on your staff do you really need it? I had a massage last week and I had to, I think, hand over my firstborn with all the paperwork that I had to complete. And then the spam just started, emails, text messages, all those sorts of things. You need to know my medications that I'm on. Would you even understand what they are or what they're for? So the same as inside businesses, your employee data. You know, do you actually have copies of someone's driver's license that they've emailed to you and you've put on file somewhere? Really, do you need that information? Because if you don't collect it, if you don't store it, then it's not there to be stolen. So I think it's really important to make sure that you think about, you know, what you're collecting, why you're collecting it. By human nature, we love collecting data and we never want to delete anything. So challenging that thought process. And the last thing I would say is leadership. I don't know how many times, you know, you hear feedback of bloody ITs making us do, you know, X, Y, Z. It's really important that leadership is utterly engaged in your cybersecurity strategies, understanding what the solutions are, understanding what the issues are, and leading by example and encouraging staff to actually take security, you know, on board and that give it an absolute priority, because it is, at the end of the day, everybody's responsibility.
Love that, Jo, thank you. And just reflecting on, Forsyths has really got the trifecta in that we've got checks, file numbers, drivers, So you can appreciate how much of a critical focus it is internally. So Michael, I'm going to throw to you and then obviously Alan, because Sophos very much supports Forsyths in scam protection. So Michael, I'd love to hear just, you know, some of the aspects that Forsyths has been exposed to, which we've safeguarded against.
Thank you, Carls. And I will remember that, Jo. I am bloody IT.
I say that about you all the time.
So I actually thought we're an accounting firm. A couple of numbers is probably not a bad thing to introduce. So yesterday I had a quick look at what we're seeing in terms of what email volume that we're seeing. And in the last 30 days alone, we've actually been hit with 120,000 emails. And of those, because of the protections that we have, and we partner with Sophos significantly for that, we run 2 layers of protection to filter. You could call it distilling if you're in the alcohol industry. And that brings it down to 30,000 of emails that we actually want. So that's a significant difference between what you're seeing that would be malicious versus what you actually want. But even with that, 30,000 emails is a lot, and something can still get through. And so what is very difficult for these filters to actually identify is when the accounts that are sending to you are compromised themselves. And for us, that's our clients. Our clients are the ones that are compromised first, and then that is a landing or a leverage point for the attackers to then go to every other client or associate that client has as well. So it's very much a community-based problem. It's infectious across the whole community. And so what we are seeing is more of that. We're seeing more clients being compromised and more of those attempts to then phish ourselves as well. And so a couple of examples of that, we do bookkeeping services, where we do payment processing, and we had a client where their account had been breached. They received an invoice from a supplier. That invoice was changed, the bank account details were changed within their emails. And then when that was then forwarded to us to pay, we flagged that the bank account details had actually changed and alerted the client that there was a problem. And that particular instance was considered a notifiable data breach under the Privacy Act. That attacker had access to that account for some time. They were monitoring, they were looking for the prime opportunity to get that funds for themselves. So that relates to a lot of what the others have spoken about. And the common one now is files will be shared from that account that is actually a very legitimate way of sharing files. It will be OneDrive, it will be Dropbox, it will be SharePoint, and that's very hard to detect until you're actually at the end user and they need to spot the things that might mean that it's actually a scam. It is very hard. It is very hard. Everyone is very busy. It's hard to catch those, which is where awareness training comes in significantly. So for us, we do awareness training, as Joe said. We do small 5-minute blocks every month. And the idea behind that is to just train the muscle. It's not to make you a cybersecurity expert. There's too much to know. You're not going to get an email that looks exactly like the training, but it's just going to raise that awareness and that curiosity as to whether or not it is actually legitimate or not. And as Joe said, we also do phish testing, but we do that quarterly. We don't do that as often because it is just a touch point to see whether or not the training is working. And we found that when we did that more frequently, our team members were just living in fear. They would question everything. And we do need people to trust their own judgment as well. So that's the stuff that we're seeing a lot more of and the stuff that we need to be more mindful of.
So Alan, my favourite email every month is from Sophos. So
Nice.
this is the one I can do in 30 seconds. So tell us more about how Sophos, basically have those mechanisms that they can support businesses with.
Sure. Well, I guess it starts with being a global organisation. So one of the benefits of the technology that we've produced for around about 40 years is that on a daily basis, Sophos sees the development of new threats around the world, and we can bring technology that helps us solve that on behalf of all of our customers. Right? So customers or companies like Sophos bring that knowledge in a at scale, automated fashion, so that you can respond more quickly to threats as they develop, but purely technical nature. It's probably worth calling out that one of the things we're seeing at the moment is that 10 years ago, an attacker needed to have all of the technical know-how to hack into your network, steal your information, encrypt your hard drive. Nowadays, somebody just needs to be motivated to be a criminal. all of that infrastructure is available in an as-a-service model. So if you want to go and hack somebody, I'm not encouraging anybody here to do that. There are places you can go to sign up for essentially a contract with somebody who will provide you everything you need to do. They will sell access to a business. So there are people who specialize in just getting access in the door, and there are people who specialize in making the malware operate. And so that's a real challenge, and I think it helps us to understand. Quite often people can think, well, why would anybody want to hack little old me? Right? They're not looking at you as an individual, or they're not targeting you as an individual. They're being opportunistic for usually for financial reasons, as we've heard already. So the big motivation we should all have is to make ourselves a less attractive target than the guy down the street. Yeah. So, is there a question? No.
Thank you, Alan.
Sure.
I think in hearing all of those fantastic points, what jumped out for me was the human factor is the biggest area of vulnerability for all of our businesses. So, you can have processes, systems, software until the cows come home. But yeah, particularly, Jake, I'd love to know a little bit more, leveraging off that example you gave previously, as to what do businesses do to better educate and safeguard from that human factor? It's a great thing that there's so much trust that we have as human nature, but yeah, how do you be a bit more vigilant and educate that?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Carly. What we generally do from an audit perspective is around that human factor. What fraud examiners talk about when we're looking at fraud, they talk about this fraud triangle, and the fraud triangle is made up of obviously 3 points. The first point is around pressure. So if your employees have pressure, that may be mortgage stress, marriage breakdown, a gambling addiction, they may have pressure to commit fraud. Then the next one is around rationalisation. So if an employee has what this means is, they may feel undervalued, they may feel entitled, they may feel that I contribute a significant amount to this business and I'm not paid adequately for my contribution. And those two parts of the triangle, they're very hard for a business to protect against because they're outside of your control, essentially. The third part of the triangle is the opportunity, right? And that's where a employee has the ability to go in and commit the fraud. And that's where the controls and the processes need to come in. That's where you need to be targeting. Now, what we do find is that implementing some of these controls, one of the things we talk about is segregation of duties. So you should never, any business that doesn't have the owners directly involved in doing every process, if they've got an employee that's doing it, you should never have them with the ability to do an end-to-end process. So they should never be able to go through, receive a payment, authorise a payment and make the payment, right? There should be a 2 signatories on the bank account. They shouldn't be able to approve their own timesheets, this type of thing. So that's where segregation of duties comes in. Where we find the issue with getting a lot of businesses to adopt these types of controls is there's a lot of trust in small business. You quite often see your employees as part of the family, and you go, well, I feel uncomfortable by putting these controls in place because they think that I wouldn't trust them and it might affect our relationship. Right? That's one of the biggest reasons why these controls don't get put into place. Now, where we come from our perspective is, it's not just about that trust between you trusting your employee. There should be trust both ways. And as an employer, you have an obligation to protect your employees, particularly those that you say, oh, they're part of the family, I trust them. And what that means is you should never put your employee in a position where they may be potentially compromised. Like, you can't control what's going on in their home life. You might have someone who is, 100%, they'll be the most trustworthy person, but they have a marriage breakdown, they have some debts going on outside of it. You don't know what they can be capable of in the right scenario. So you have an obligation to make sure they're not compromised, they're never put in a position where they have to make that decision. You take that out of their control. You also, the other side of that is, you never put your employees in a position where they may be wrongly accused of doing something dirty or doing a misdeed when it's an earnest mistake. So you put those controls in place to go, well, if they make an honest mistake, you're not going, oh, I think that, my creditor's clerk might be siphoning money from me. They're a family friend from way back. You don't want to have that relationship break down purely because you didn't have, you didn't want to have that conversation about implementing fraud controls with them. So that's what we encourage. We go, well, it's quite an easy conversation to have and with your employees when you spin it that way. It's important for both sides. It's about you looking after me looking after you. So that's the human element that we're seeing out there.
Yeah, and I can certainly vest for there being many client situations over the years that we've been privy to that has been a complete reflection of that situation. Clients that have had employees have exactly that, a personal event that has led them to a desperate situation, and all of those things take a lot of time to unearth because, as I said, all relationships are founded on trust. So, Michael, I'm curious to, across our 140 team members, we're very grateful that there hasn't been those extensive situations, but nonetheless, processes are really critical, and love Jake's example that the best thing you can do is not have someone deal with an end-to-end process. So have you got any similar examples that you can relate in your experience?
For us internally, we have a lot of those controls already. We can't approve invoices without it going through finance. There is double and triple approvals on most instances. But Jake mentioned a very good thing there, which was the trust factor. And what we do find with our fish testing is that our team members trust our own departments more than they probably should. So HR, IT, if it comes from us, there's almost a default trust that it is legitimate. And that's the sort of stuff that we do need to kind of be mindful of, but also on the perspective of, we frequently say that the people is the most important part of the equation, but I think it's a little bit unfair to actually put all of that weight on the people. Through Sophos, through multiple other mechanisms that we have, there's controls and protections for the people, after the people. It's a much broader ecosystem of protection. And so whilst people can be a very valuable and very strong part of your protection, there's a lot more that you need to think about. We have protections on the network itself, on our emails, on our computers, on what web addresses we can get to. There's filtering on multiple accounts, and it all is a layered approach so that we can both trust but also not trust at the same time. So.
And yes, of course, Shannon, Alan and Joe, I'd love to hear, just conscious that it may not be as relevant to some of your roles, but would you like to add anything to those comments?
I can add something around the people aspect, and we've talking a lot about the testing and around phishing and those kinds of things. That's definitely important. It's also worthwhile keeping in mind, what if the worst happens, right? And there's training that Cloudwize and others can provide around, just like you would for a bushfire, right? You have a bushfire preparedness plan. You should have a business of any decent size should have an incident response plan. So what happens? Do we know where our most important data is? How is it controlled? What are the processes around handling that data? When an event happens, who do we have to notify? How do we communicate? And with our partners or with regulators or whoever it might be. Having that plan in place helps you, number one, be more confident when it does happen, and helps you contain the damage if it does happen. But it's just like a fire drill or the phishing test that we do, and those tests can be implemented with the help of Cloudwize and others, and also on a frequent basis tested in a safe environment, simulating an actual event to make sure that everybody's happy with the process. So I think that's something I would recommend most businesses take on.
So IT and cyber security, all of these platforms can be expensive. It's really how long's a piece of string when you're dealing with this level of protection and cost consideration. So what is I'll throw to you, Joe, what is your advice to businesses in firstly understanding the value of this level of protection and the safety net that businesses need to build in, and how can businesses do it within their means and without blowing the budget necessarily too.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've yet to find a client that has unlimited budget, but we're still looking. So in the interim, we've got to work with our clients from a very strategic approach is how we intend to take it. So when we onboard a client to start with, we will do a review of their key risks and improvement opportunities. We put together a 3-year roadmap so that gives them a plan for where things are going and what they need to take into consideration. And then we have regular meetings with them where, at the end of the day, we're living in the space of technology, which is evolving and changing all the time. So what we said last year is not necessarily now as relevant as new emerging issues or opportunities. So we're having those regular strategic conversations, and with that, the way we like to operate is as a partnership. So we're wanting to partner with you to understand what you can and you can't do. We want to talk to you in simple, plain English, so the non-propeller head actually has the conversations with you. That sort of says about what are those risks, how can we mitigate them. It's as Michael said, security is a multi-layered approach, and there's different holes opening up all the time. And so it's around identifying those holes and what's relevant to you. But you can't, if we secure everything to the nth degree, you'll be secure, but your staff will struggle to actually do their jobs. So there's a constant tension between agility and security that we have to navigate. And the best way to do that is through conversation, through understanding what your priorities are, and putting in place a plan of attack that will allow you to build over time to where you want to get to. A lot of times people think cybersecurity is a checklist. If I check, where's the list? Give me the list and I'll just check it off. It doesn't work that way. There's different postures for different organisations. A large organisation with a board is going to have quite different requirements to a small organisation, of 5 people. So it's around identifying what individual organisations need and working towards that. And then as I said, keeping the language simple, making it accessible. And I would strongly encourage anyone in business, don't do the thing where, I don't know anything about IT. You actually do know a fair bit. You actually know what's important to your business. Take the time to understand, take the time to ask questions. If you aren't getting answers that help you understand, keep asking or talk to somebody else. Because it's important for you to actually know and understand and make decisions inside your business. You can't outsource that. And a company like Cloudwize, you can outsource so much too, and we'll partner with you. But ultimately, what your priorities are, what's important to your business, is your decision. So it's really important to get some understanding. And the technical stuff, you don't need to know, what widget gets turned on here or button gets pushed there. It's actually really around understanding what those key processes are in your business, what the key data is inside your business, what are the limitations that you currently have, and then putting a plan in place to achieve that.
Thank you, Jo. And Shannon, I've got a great question for you, because I know the banks have been very proactive in education, for years now. And, I've been in branch and, even the tellers are asking and confirming, what is that transfer for? Do you know where it's going? So I'd love to hear more around the bank's proactiveness in providing that support to businesses as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I think just utilising the tools that the bank offer. So not everyone loves online banking. So we've got generations, obviously, where they still pull out the checkbook. There's more fraud in check than online bank. Like, it's easier to do check fraud than it is to do online banking if you have the right protocols and like if you've got the tutor sign on the account. So you've got that second person checking, where someone can steal your checkbook, write a check, cash it. So just the approach that you're having. So educating your staff, making sure they understand what we've been discussing, like policies and procedures, and making sure they understand why we're doing it. I think just, the education of online banking. And I think the other thing is just making sure you're taking that time and stepping back and actually looking at how you are doing your banking. Just because you've been doing it the one way for so many years doesn't mean it's still right. So I see a lot where people have family businesses and they've still got the old bookkeeper on their online banking and they still have access to that data. So just taking a step back and reviewing how you're currently doing things and seeing if you can do it better. And reaching out to your bank and asking what they have in place that can help, because there might be something there that you're not using that could be free and helpful. So.
Thanks, Janet. So, Alan, what else are you seeing within your network where there is just other resources available to businesses to be able to better protect themselves?
Yeah, so and to your earlier point about doing it within a certain budget, right? There are a few different controls and services that are available. So if you think about the challenge of cybersecurity is really 24/7, right? If people don't necessarily hack you in the middle of the day on your business hours, they quite often do it when there's no business hours. And as somebody referred to earlier on, the longer that they're in your environment, the more damage they will cause, the more hardship you're going to go through. So there's a lot of focus on, well, how do we catch something as it happens and respond effectively. And any business in Australia, right up to the biggest banks, struggle to employ enough people to do that around the clock. So what you can access these days through companies like Sophos and others is a managed detection and response service that will essentially monitor your environment. And it scales all the way from a handful of people in a business to tens of thousands of people. The price points are usually quite good. But what they're doing is they've employed skilled people around the globe to operate around the clock. They'll watch your environment. And when something suspicious is detected, they have people who can respond effectively. So rather than having a situation where hackers in your environment, like one of the great stories from way back was, I think it was Target or Kmart in the US were hacked, and the hackers infiltrated the FPOS machines. So they just sat there for months and months and months gathering credit card numbers. Right? And so the longer, that's what I'm saying, the longer that they're in there, the more damage that can be done. So you need people who can understand all that technical ones and zeros, mumbo jumbo, and work out, well, what do I need to do to respond to this effectively? And that service is something that you can access today. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I guess to, sum up a lot of the conversation today, if there were only two things that a business could do to implement, or I should say few rather than two, just to keep it nice and succinct, what would you recommend that they do starting with that?
Yeah, so this has been covered by all the other speakers, but it's pretty straightforward. The first thing you need to do is a risk assessment. You need to identify where, and for cybersecurity, you may need to bring in the experts because it is above a lot of our heads. But from a general forward perspective, you as a business owner could actually do that risk assessment. You put yourselves in the shoes, and this is from an audit perspective quite fun. You put yourselves in the shoes of the potential fraudster, and you go, if I was trying to steal that tool, or I was trying to embezzle money out of the bank account, how would I do it? So you go through and you do that risk assessment, and then you try and design the controls to cover those gaps. So that's the first thing that I would recommend doing. And then the other thing that's been covered by the other speakers as well is to focus on the training and awareness of your staff. We as Michael was saying, we do cybersecurity training here. It's easy. It's once a month. It's 5 minutes. There was an incident where somebody was coming to get me at work with a phishing email, and it was only because something triggered in my head that this doesn't look about right that I reached out to Michael, and he went, "Yeah, mate, you're on the money here. They're coming to get you." And I was like, "Oh wow, how good! I've done my duty here." So so it's that awareness, and it's about building that culture within your organisation that everyone's responsible for the protection of the business and themselves, because if the business gets compromised, generally a lot of personal data gets compromised as well, and vice versa. You might have emails on your work phone that you use for private purposes. If you're not doing the right thing in your apps, they might get in the back door through the business. So, those are the two things that I think businesses should be definitely prioritising.
Thanks, Jake. And Joe, I'd like to hear your summation too.
Yeah, so look, it's a consistent theme. Culture, a culture of security being everybody's responsibility is so important. There are stats showing that an increase in suicide as the direct result of cybersecurity, of people having their identity stolen. And it takes about 6 months to get your identity back. So if you even think about one of your team members that's happening in their life, or that's happening in a member of their family's life, the impact on your business could be quite substantial as well. So security is everybody's responsibility. We have these days the WHS frameworks, for example, that can be directly applied to cybersecurity. But as Jacob said, it's, there's a lot of technical stuff in here. So one of the things that, we're offering as part of today's session is actually a free cybersecurity assessment. It's an opportunity for you to do that helicopter sort of view of where things are at, get an understanding of what any gaps you have, and take that first step if you aren't already very proactive, like our great friends here at Forsyths who have put a lot in place to secure their environment. If you're at the front end of the cybersecurity journey, then understanding what those gaps are and understanding how you might be able to address those is probably a really good place to start.
That's true. Alan?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned incident response planning. I think it's probably a great place to start. Like Jacob was saying, from a risk assessment point of view, getting that high level sense of where am I at today, where are my gaps, what do I need to work on? Even if you don't address them all immediately, you can start to develop a plan for how you will address them. So for me, that's really important, and it's not something that's going to blow the budget either. I think that and the managed detection and response, if you're concerned about the ability, your business's ability to respond effectively. And for example, we've been dealing with a number of councils around Australia recently where the legislation has made it, they've got to report a data breach by virtue of the changes to legislation in the past few years, and that's just coming into councils' domain this year. So they're increasingly adopting services like managed detection and response because they recognise they can't employ people 24/7 to detect them.
Thanks, Alan. And Shannon?
What we've all said, education. So knowledge is key. So making sure our staff, all of your staff, are aware of what's going on out there. I've handed over some good book of scams. So I think some of you will be getting them today. So that's just checking that agency website all the time, making sure you know what's out there. I would suggest that's, knowledge is key.
And anything further to add, Michael?
Well, everyone stole my idea. So I think touching on the risk and the data protection and all of those sorts of things, it is a sliding scale between your risk tolerance versus how much data you have, and in our case, it is very sensitive data. So you've got to consider your risk profile may be that you do not want any risk. So your costs are going to be higher. It is a sliding scale, but that being said, you don't need to do it overnight. Start small, build up over time. As Joe said, make a plan and ramp up to where you want to be in the sort of time frame that you can manage. We obviously use the Sophos managed detection, and from our perspective, or my perspective, it's about key risk as well. We have a small internal team for IT. We can't be monitoring that 24/7. When we were, it was keeping me up at night. So to have, we were doing very well. We were responding to events within 12 minutes, but to have an actual team behind us that supports us with that is very valuable.
Thank you so much, Helen. It's the perfect time to open up the floor to questions now. So
much relevant information that resonates from all of you. And Joe, you talk about fatigue. I think that's half of it. With all, especially at my age, you get to that point where you use passwords are just doing your head in. You've got to write them down somewhere. You could be book that says password, so when they come to raid your home, they can, But what I was going to say to Shannon was that the banks have lifted the game a lot. I had to make a $20,000 payment just recently, and I'm still stressing because the banks held it up, which is good, to make sure that, because I always ring now to make sure that the information is correct on the email. And so that's good, but I'm still stressing because the payment still hasn't gone through. Yet I was in the position where it was reversed and someone was trying to make a payment to me, but the bank kept sending them a warning. And so that person rang me and we made sure that the information was correct and then the payment went through. But he was still very concerned because he was getting that warning up from me. So how come it's like the innocent people have to jump through so many hoops and passwords and to keep things safe, and the scammers are just there going, yeah, beauty, it's one.
Yeah, it's hard.
No, but
that's, I think, the approach. Everyone could be a scammer, so, excuse me. So that's why the bank, if they do think it is something that's unusual, they will stop, especially $20,000. Like that's
but the other payment coming through me was only like $250, and I'm finding a lot of times people aren't paying me because that scamming thing's coming up, and I just don't know what to do about that either. Because the more you try to justify yourself, the more they go, alert.
Send out some more bills for 20 grand.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to know if like what banks it involves.
That'll be the perfect thing for you to chat about after the session. But Jack, sorry, you had a question.
Potential comment to that is I know that on the payment processing side for myself, a lot of the times that we see those warnings and see those delays in processing are where it's asking for business name, like it's asking for the name on the account, and because it's a so-and-so proprietary limited trading as, maybe it's one of those situations where you've got one business with 4 trading names where you're running the farm, you're running the insemination business, you're running the breeding stock improvement, then it gets a little bit tricky where you're like, well, I'm paying this particular business and you put in that business name, but the account is actually mum and dad partnership.
Yeah.
And so those things, like we get issues where, like we have that a lot with cafes and stuff, where we're catering for things that.
It was my name though, like my correct name, so.
Yeah.
Have you,
Those-
you a
those
scammer?
Too many of you.
Well, I changed my name, see?
Sorry, question here.
I've got a question for Shannon. How confident can you be when you're using, like you've received an invoice and it has BPay details on it? Can they hack in and change?
I'm not going to say 100%, but 99%.
So it's a lot better than account details,
Definitely. And also, if you've got the opportunity to do pay to with your ABN, so instead of putting your personal BSB and account details for your business on your invoices, you can actually do pay to your ABN as well, which obviously anyone can search up an ABN and make sure that the details are correct too. So you don't have to give out your BSB and account number. So there's new ways of payments coming out all the time. So.
Fantastic, Shannon. And we've got a question from our online attendees. Megan, over to you.
Can a business be confident that invoices that are being emailed out of accounting software such as Xero are safer from hacking than invoices emailed directly from your own software such as Outlook?
Fantastic question. Who would like to answer that one?
I'll jump in the sense that if your mailbox, so the company mailbox, the Xero mailboxes may be safe, but if the recipient mailbox has actually been breached, then it can be done through that process of the recipient mailbox. So the reality is we can never be 100% sure, and that's why we talk about taking these precautions. A few scenarios we have seen is where companies are being asked to demonstrate that they have done enough to protect their environment when there's been large amounts of money that have been transferred. So ensuring that you've done everything, you've put in place the controls that you can, including things like domain security, so that ensures that nothing gets sent out from your email address that has been in any way changed along the way. Those are the sorts of things that you need to have to be able to defend a claim that can potentially come your way, even though ultimately it turns out it was the recipient's email inbox that was impacted.
Thank you, Joe. We had a question from Chris.
Yeah, Jacob, you mentioned the business that you were working with that were nearly scammed of 1.5 mil. Was there any broad broader sort of control changes that they later implemented after that happened?
Yeah, so what it was in terms of that, because it's a very niche sort of event, and it was, you can target everything that went wrong to that first conversation, right? Because it was, you built that rapport over time, and they went through their standard control processes from there. So what they did is they put in a process whereby you have to, even if you get a phone call from someone saying I'm changing my details, you have to then ring the number that's on file before you make that change. So what would have happened if the creditors clerk had picked up his regular contact and gone, oh, you know, John Smith has rung me up saying that they've changed all your details. They'd be like, what the hell's going on? No, you're in trouble here. Would have alleviated the whole process. The other thing that they did to try and catch the end point is they implemented a software called EFT Short. And what this software does, essentially, I'm not aware of the ins and outs of it, but essentially what it can do is it verifies ABN details to bank account numbers. So that would have helped on the back end as well, but it's really just, you know, don't take anything for granted. If you get a phone call from someone who you don't know, with a big supplier or from a business that you're used to normally working with, just ring your contact and go, is this legitimate, mate? That would have been the stop gap for that.
It's always the simple things, isn't it? We had a question at the back.
Just a question to the whole panel. Talk about the importance of education in terms of building a culture, and I think when you're talking about the impacts of a breach or any sort of data exfiltration, it's somewhat easier to make that link in people's minds if it is something to do with finances or if it is something to do with specific payments. You know, a $1.5 million payment will get anybody's attention. When what we're dealing with is generally private information on clients or things that might be involved in identity theft, has also been mentioned. One experience that I've had is that it's been quite difficult to make that real in the minds of staff members. You talk about cybercrime and they say they can clean out my bank account, there's nothing in there anyway. That's true, and in the short term that's the big thing that people are worried about. But in the longer term, as Joe was saying, 6 months to get your identity back. It's not an easy 6 months. It's not 6 months business as usual. It's 6 grueling months that can often lead to the end of a life. How can we make that link more easily with people when we're not dealing in pure financial terms?
I think one thing you could say is that the reason that they're stealing the information is because they're financially motivated. They will use the information to get to the next step, right? A little bit like Jacob's example then. They're not stealing the information just to create a catalogue or a scrapbook, right? One thing I will say about that I personally use is a service called Equifax. So for people who are concerned about having their identity stolen, you can notify them of, and so anybody who applies for credit, they will verify, hey, we've had a credit application and they used this driver's license number as identity, and you as the person who actually owns the driver's license will get an email notifying you, hey, somebody's applied for credit. And that gives you an opportunity to step in early and notify. Well, in my experience, there's been few examples where people have attempted to do that over the last few years, but thankfully the credit organizations caught it and denied it all but one time. And in one time I had to go back and correct it, but being notified early, as with any things we've been talking about today, is a big help. That's not an expensive service.
Tim, the other thing I would say as well is about really embedding that security as everyone's responsibility. In this, again, I made the comment before about the WHS sort of framework, but having security as a discussion in toolbox meetings or in team meetings and talking about examples, talking about it's only by that awareness that people actually can connect the dots that this actually could be relevant to me. So I think it's about that constant reinforcement.
I think that's a really good point, and it's what I really wanted to hear from you was this is the one easy thing you can do to make that happen. The better message that you're delivering is you start, and you just embed it in and let it soak in.
Got a question, the gentleman at this side.
How often do you think people should change their codes, say for their bank details, various things like that? How often should you change it, do you think?
I might take that one actually. It's interesting, we touched on it before. I think Joe actually, you mentioned the use of a password manager and the fatigue that we've been experiencing as well. A big recommendation is get a password vault. Change all of your passwords to be unique, complex across all of your logins, all of your systems. Traditionally, in the past, it's been change your passwords every 3 months, especially in a large business environment. But there's a lot of change in sentiment around that now, and I'm sure everyone has had password 1, 2, 3, 4. Frequently, when you have that fatigue, the change that you make with those passwords is so minimal that it makes no difference. So a lot of the recommendation now is make it secure, make it strong, and change it less frequently. So you could go yearly. The big thing you're trying to avoid there is if one platform is compromised, and Joe mentioned this, if they do not have multi-factor, that's a big risk area. An attacker will use that credential to try to get to something more valuable. So if you can block that because it is different, that is a big win.
And biometrics.
Yes, biometrics would be multi-factor authentication.
Yeah.
One of the good things about Password Manager is it relieves the pressure on you personally from inventing the password, and it automatically creates a complex password. There is software that attackers use to guess people's passwords, and they will brute force. They'll just keep trying from a dictionary of sample regularly used passwords, including the password 1, 2, 3s and all those. And that software operates, so it's no effort on the part of the attacker to try tens of thousands of passwords or to guess. So the longer your password is and the more complex it is in terms of special characters and numbers, and the less it looks like a name or a word, the better. And password managers make it really easy for you to have a separate password for everything. And it operates well with your phone, with your laptop. You can have the same passwords, that you're using on either device with a password manager. So I would definitely recommend
It's
that.
so good, it locks me out.
And a last question from me.
One last quick one from the online, and it's a little bit relevant to a couple of questions that have already been asked. What's the risk when using the invoicing through our accounting software like MYOB and Xero, and they have their own payment portals? MYOB, for example, have gone to a system which only allows customers to use their payment portal rather than direct deposits or cash. Is there a risk that MYOB, for example, could be compromised? So similar to BPay, is there the similar risk that MYOB could be compromised and those details could be changed?
The short answer is nobody's 100% saying that. Let's be realistic about it. But Forsyths probably have a view on this too, but companies like MYOB have a lot of regulatory compliance demands on them, and they would probably employ a lot more people and technology to be as secure as they can be, right? And they will have many of the services we talked about as well. So but I would say nobody is illegally safe.
Thanks, Alan. I would just in the interest of the time, we'll wrap that up, but please catch everyone after. But I'd like to wrap up by extending a huge thank you to the panellists. I think that was exceptionally insightful, and the level of questions coming out just indicate the engagement that we've had. We've got a little something to say thank you, so we'll pass it on after the fact. But for me, in wrapping it up, I think, in hearing today, I can best sum it up by the most recent Westpac ad that's on TV at the moment, if anyone's seen it. It's a lady jogging down the street, she's got her bodyguards, and all these drones are attacking, and it's, a bit doomsday. And I think the biggest thing is that you need so many sets of eyes and so much engagement in your IT space to safeguard it. So, we've got, the likes of amazing regional providers in Cloudwize. We've got Entourage Technology here today. Some really high caliber businesses that support you in that. We've got the eyes of your accounting team, the eyes of the auditors, of course, the bank supporting you and navigating through this, and then some great software solutions too. So I suppose for me, it's just utilising all of those people in your business, whether they may be internal or external, to support you in this space. It's so critical, and feels like every week there's a news story about a top 20 ASX firm that's been hacked. So if they can be hacked, anyone can be hacked, I suppose, is the key takeaway for me. So it's not stopping that vigilance, and some great insights. So I'm sure there'll be further questions after we finish the session, but we'll wrap it up there, and a huge thank you to all of our attendees today. Thank you. Morning tea. Yes, morning tea served.